Hey guys, tonight we're going to dive into the strange, savory, and surprisingly soothing world of the Viking diet after battle. Imagine you've just trudged back from a brutal fight, your body bruised, your muscles aching, your clothes soaked in the sweat and blood of battle. You're hungry, not just for food, but for something that'll give you the energy to recover, get some rest, and start the process of healing your war-torn body. So what did the Vikings eat after they finished their epic battles to help them fall asleep faster? Well, sit tight, because this is a journey into Viking kitchens, their daily routines, and the foods they ate to sustain their warrior strength. Now, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, feel free to post where you're watching from and what time it is. It's always interesting to see where my viewers are tuning in from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The first thing to know about the Vikings after battle is that they didn't simply sit down to a hot dog and a bag of chips. No, they were warriors who valued strength, endurance, and recovery. After the adrenaline and the battle rage faded, the warrior's body needed proper sustenance food that would replenish the energy lost in the fight and prepare them for the rest they so desperately needed. A Viking's meal wasn't about fancy gourmet cuisine. It was practical, hearty, and designed to ensure they could stay strong and sleep soundly afterward. Vikings were known for their grueling combat, whether they were raiding villages or defending their homelands. Their bodies, after such taxing days, needed nourishment that would repair muscles, restore energy, and ensure they woke up the next day ready to do it all again. First off, let's talk about the Viking diet overall. This wasn't the kind of diet you see today with trendy superfoods. No, the Vikings' daily meals were centered around the basics: meats, fish, grains, and a surprising amount of fermented foods. They ate what they could hunt, fish, or grow. The Vikings were not picky eaters. They made use of everything the land and sea provided. Think hearty breads, salted fish, roasted meats, and plenty of dairy. They didn't exactly have supermarkets, so most of their meals came from what they could farm or catch. Barley, rye, and oats were common grains. Then, of course, there was meat, primarily pork, lamb, and beef, often dried or smoked for preservation. Fish was a major part of their diet as well, especially in coastal regions. The Viking meal after a battle would have been a mix of protein-rich foods with a focus on restoring strength. Let's focus for a moment on the Vikings' drink of choice, mead. This wasn't just any beverage. It was an integral part of their post-battle ritual. Mead, a fermented drink made from honey, water, and sometimes fruit, was a warrior's drink of choice. After the battle, mead would have been the first thing Vikings reached for. Historians still argue whether mead's primary purpose was to serve as a celebratory drink or a restorative one. But either way, it served its purpose, providing calories, a dose of sugar for an energy boost, and maybe even a little mental relaxation after the chaos of battle. The Viking mead was much more potent than modern versions, and drinking it was like a small ritual, sipping slowly, feeling the warmth spread through your body. This drink not only nourished but also helped to calm the warriors' nerves, offering a temporary reprieve from the horrors they'd just lived through. Once the Vikings were properly hydrated with mead, the focus would shift to food. After the battle, they didn't just grab anything in the pantry. They were after high-protein meals. Meat was key here. Whether it was roasted boar, venison, or goat, the Viking meal was built around whatever meat they could catch or preserve. Salted fish, particularly herring, was a favorite. and it's believed that Vikings often consumed their fish raw or lightly smoked. For a warrior, protein wasn't just about taste, it was about recovery. Meat provided the building blocks needed to repair muscles torn during the skirmish. Even though Vikings didn't have the same understanding of nutrition we do today, they knew that what they ate was essential for restoring strength after a battle. Their bodies were physically demanding, and their meals were designed to meet those demands. But Vikings weren't all about meat. In fact, their meals also included significant amounts of grains. Barley, oats, and rye were the backbone of their diet. These grains were ground into flour and used to make thick porridge or coarse bread. These bread and porridge dishes, while seemingly simple, were vital to the Viking recovery process. Complex carbohydrates from grains helped stabilize energy levels. After a long day of battle, a Viking's body needed a source of energy that would release slowly throughout the night, helping the warrior fall asleep without waking up hungry. Historians still debate how the Vikings used their grains, whether they consumed them more as a side dish or as a primary meal, but one thing is clear: bread, porridge, and other grain-based dishes were integral parts of their post-battle routine. After the meat and grains came something less glamorous, but just as important: fermented foods. Viking food wasn't just about taste, it was about functionality. Fermentation was a key method of preserving food, and it also had benefits for digestion. The Vikings ate a lot of fermented products, like sauerkraut and pickled herring. These foods helped balance the gut, making them crucial after a battle when the body was already stressed and food was being consumed in greater amounts. Fermented foods not only aided in digestion, but also played a role in boosting the Viking immune system. The digestive health provided by fermented foods would have been key for ensuring that warriors didn't just heal quickly, but stayed healthy long after the battle. By the time the meal was finished, the Vikings would have felt full, satisfied, and ready for rest. Sleep was crucial after the physical exertion of battle, and the Vikings knew that a hearty meal, combined with the relaxing effects of mead and fermented foods, would aid in a good night's sleep. They didn't have the luxury of over-the-counter sleep aids or relaxation apps like we do today. Instead, their food, protein, grains, and fermented foods worked together to prepare their bodies for a restful night. As they lay down to sleep, the effects of the mead would have settled in, soothing the warrior's nerves, while the protein and grains worked their magic, keeping them full and relaxed. In our modern world, we might think of a quick protein bar or a warm cup of milk to help us sleep. But for the Vikings, their food was an essential part of their recovery process, fueling them for the next battle, while also ensuring they got the rest they needed. Their diet was practical, nourishing, and perfectly suited for the life of a warrior. So, the next time you find yourself needing rest after a long day, you might want to consider what the Vikings knew all along. A good meal and some time to relax are key to a peaceful night's sleep. Asterisk. Now that you've got the basics of what a Viking might eat after battle to settle down for the night, let's zoom out a little and explore the Viking diet in general. As a warrior, food wasn't about flavor or delicacy, it was about practicality and fueling your body for survival. The Vikings had a pretty straightforward, hearty diet that focused on what they could easily obtain from the land, sea, and animals around them. Their meals were rich in proteins, fats, and carbohydrates for the energy needed to endure the rigors of their violent and demanding lifestyles. So, after a battle, Vikings needed something that would restore their strength and keep them alert. After all, they couldn't afford to be sluggish for long. The next battle, raid, or journey could be just around the corner. Their food was meant to keep them physically at their peak, whether they were on a long sea voyage or defending their homeland. Vikings weren't known for their fine dining habits. Instead, they were survivors. They made do with what they could forage, hunt, or fish, and that meant a lot of meat, fish, and grains. Let's start with meat. Vikings didn't have the luxury of fresh meat every day, so they were experts at preserving it. They smoked, salted, or dried meat to ensure it lasted longer. Their favorite meats were often from animals they raised like pigs, cows, and sheep. These were more accessible in the Nordic regions, especially on large family farms where the Vikings kept livestock. The meat wasn't just for eating after battle, but also for trading. Viking society was built on practicality, and that practicality extended to their diet. They knew that the protein from meat helped rebuild their muscle tissue after battle. One common way Vikings prepared meat was by roasting it over a fire, allowing it to get a crisp exterior while staying juicy and tender inside. It was hearty, simple, and fuel for the body's recovery. Now, let's talk fish. The Vikings were not only inland farmers, they were also seafarers, and their relationship with the sea was central to their survival. Fish was a major component of their diet, especially in coastal regions where they had easy access to the ocean. Herring, cod, and salmon were common choices, and much like meat, fish was often salted or smoked for preservation. Vikings could store large amounts of fish, ensuring they had a steady supply even during winter. This salted fish was often a quick meal after a long day, packed with protein and ready to eat. Interestingly, fish wasn't just consumed in its basic form, it was often used in stews or soups, mixed with vegetables or grains to create filling meals. The fish's oils also played a role in Viking nutrition, providing essential fats that helped to maintain energy levels during the cold Nordic winters. You could almost imagine yourself sitting down after a long day's fight, a steaming bowl of fish stew in front of you, the salty broth warming your bones. Then there are the grains. What would a Viking meal be without barley, oats, or rye? These grains were the foundation of Viking meals, and many of their post-battle meals would be grain-heavy. Bread, porridge, and even a kind of thin pancake were all made from grains. But why so many grains? The Vikings were practical, and grains were easy to grow, store, and transport. They also provided a steady release of energy, something vital after a long day of combat. Think of it this way. After battling all day, your body needs quick energy to replenish the glycogen stores in your muscles, and grains, with their complex carbohydrates, did just that. Bread was often the heavy, dense loaf that could withstand the rough conditions of a Viking journey. Porridge made from barley or oats would be a common breakfast or evening meal, and it wasn't just a filler. It was a necessary food to keep a Viking warrior's body functioning properly. Sometimes they'd add fruits or honey to the porridge for sweetness and extra energy, making the dish a treat that wasn't just about sustenance, but also comfort. Of course, grains weren't the only plant-based food the Vikings ate. They also consumed a variety of vegetables. The Vikings were not strictly meat-eaters. They knew the importance of a balanced diet, and that included the occasional salad or vegetable dish. Root vegetables like carrots, onions, and turnips were commonly grown in Viking gardens, and they were easy to store over the winter. The Vikings also foraged for wild herbs, such as dandelion leaves, nettles, and wild garlic. These herbs were used in soups, stews, and even as seasoning for meat and fish. Historians still debate how often vegetables made it onto the Viking dinner table. There is a general assumption that vegetables were an afterthought in Viking meals, but this might not be entirely true. In fact, wild greens and herbs would have been vital to a Viking's overall health and immune system, providing vitamins and minerals that meat and grains couldn't. Fermented foods were also a huge part of the Viking diet, and they weren't just consumed because they tasted good. The Vikings knew the value of preserving food through fermentation, which not only extended the shelf life of various items, but also added beneficial bacteria that helped with digestion. Sauerkraut, pickled herring, and fermented dairy products like yogurt and cheese were common in Viking meals. Fermented foods were so important that they were seen as part of the Viking warrior's recovery, promoting a healthy gut and ensuring that the body could process all the meat, grains, and fish that made up their diet. Fermented herring, in particular, was a key protein source for Vikings, and it was usually stored in barrels or jars to keep it fresh. It wasn't the most glamorous dish, but it was nutritious, packed with protein, and capable of sustaining a Viking warrior during the harsh winter months. While all of this might seem like enough to fuel a warrior for a day, we haven't even touched on the most exciting part, the drink. Mead was the drink of choice for Vikings, and it wasn't just a sweet treat. Made from fermented honey, mead gave the Vikings a quick boost of energy and warmth. They would often drink mead after a battle or during feasts, allowing the drink's alcohol content to help them relax and unwind after the stress of battle. In a way, mead was like a social lubricant, helped calm the nerves, and made the meal that much more enjoyable. Plus, the Vikings loved to drink together in a communal setting, toasting each other's victories and accomplishments. After a long day of combat, the alcohol and mead also acted as a relaxant, easing the Vikings into a restful sleep. Aided by the calming effects of the honey and the ritualistic nature of their mead drinking customs, historians still argue whether mead was consumed for its social or physical benefits, but there's no denying that it was central to the Viking post-battle routine. It wasn't just about what went into the body. It was about the community, the camaraderie, and the shared experience of a hard day's work. So, after a hard-fought battle, the Vikings would sit, eat, drink, and prepare for a restful night. The food and drink worked together to ensure they were nourished, relaxed, and ready to sleep soundly before the next day's challenges arrived. After the Viking warriors finished their meal of meat, fish, grains, and fermented foods, it wasn't just about slumping down to sleep. There was a process to winding down, a kind of ritual that helped signal to the body it was time to rest. While the Vikings didn't have the luxury of modern sleep aids, they understood that their bodies needed a period of recovery, and they built their routines around facilitating that. Their sleep rituals weren't complicated, but they were deeply tied to their survival and recovery, which, after a battle, was everything. First, let's talk about what happened immediately after the meal. Remember, Vikings had just come back from the grueling reality of battle. Their bodies were physically taxed, and as much as they needed food to repair and restore their strength, they also needed to relax and transition from the fight-or-flight mode they'd been operating in for hours. The act of sitting round a fire, feasting together, and engaging in conversation played a significant role in helping their minds and bodies begin the slow journey to rest. It was more than just food that helped them unwind. There was the social aspect of their post-battle meal, too. Sharing stories of the battle, celebrating their victories, and mourning their losses were all part of the Viking recovery process. This kind of communal healing helped calm their nerves and settled their minds, which, in turn, set the stage for better sleep. Viking sleep was important to their performance the following day, so the warriors ensured that their recovery included these essential moments of relaxation. You could imagine the evening filled with the crackle of the fire, the low murmur of voices telling tales of the day's events, and perhaps the occasional laugh as they raised their mugs of mead. For the Vikings, this shared time together wasn't just about unwinding, it was about strengthening bonds and creating a sense of safety and security. They had to trust one another, especially in the context of battle, and this time around, the fire helped solidify those relationships. The Vikings, in fact, were well aware of the importance of sleep for their survival, and they built their nightly routines with this in mind. They had no need for white noise machines, blackout curtains, or sleep tracking apps. They simply relied on the natural rhythms of their bodies and the world around them. In fact, they might have even found comfort in the sounds of the forest, or the wind howling outside their huts, all contributing to the calming atmosphere that signaled it was time for rest. While the environment played a key role in their sleep preparation, so did the way Vikings physically prepared for sleep. Unlike the soft cushioned beds we're accustomed to, Viking sleeping arrangements were far more rudimentary. Their sleeping platforms were usually just a hard surface covered with straw, wool blankets, and maybe furs, depending on the season. But don't mistake the simplicity of their sleeping arrangements for discomfort. In fact, the hardness of their beds may have worked in their favor. You see, when you spend your entire day on your feet, fighting, running, and battling, your body's need for a firm surface to rest on becomes incredibly important. A firm bed helps align the spine, preventing any unnecessary strain or pain that could impede sleep. The Vikings may have been sleeping on what seemed like uncomfortable surfaces, but these surfaces allowed their bodies to rest and recover without pressure points and excessive sinking that might be experienced in overly plush beds. In a sense, their beds supported their warrior needs and contributed to the restoration of their battle-worn bodies. Once the meal was digested, and their bodies had relaxed into the rhythm of the night, the Viking warriors would begin their descent into sleep. The next crucial element in their post-battle routine was the warmth provided by their environment. The Vikings knew how to manage cold. After all, they lived in some of the harshest climates on Earth. Their homes, often made of wood and thatched with grass or animal hides, were surprisingly warm once the fire was lit. During the colder months, a fire would burn well into the night, providing not only light and heat, but also a sense of security and comfort. After the meal, a Viking would lie back, perhaps with a final sip of mead, and let the warmth of the fire slowly lull them into sleep. It's interesting to think that while we might rely on electric heaters or thick blankets to stay warm, the Vikings had mastered the art of using fire and a snug, well-insulated environment to ensure a good night's sleep. They didn't need fancy bedding or modern technology. They simply relied on what nature provided. Now, you may be wondering about the specifics of how the Vikings managed their sleep cycles. Did they just crash for 8 hours and wake up refreshed? Probably not. Vikings, much like many pre-industrial societies, were used to a more segmented sleep pattern. Historians and anthropologists still debate whether the Vikings, like other early civilizations, followed a polyphasic sleep pattern. Essentially, this would mean they had 2 sleep cycles per night, perhaps sleeping for a few hours, waking up briefly, and then falling back to sleep for a second period. This kind of segmented sleep was common in pre-industrial cultures, where People would wake up naturally during the night, for brief periods perhaps, to stoke the fire, check on livestock, or even engage in light conversation. In Viking society, this pattern may have been beneficial for staying alert and safe, especially considering that they were frequently in a state of vigilance, prepared for sudden attacks or raids. Once they finally drifted off to sleep, the Vikings entered the deep, restorative slumber needed to repair their muscles and tissues. Their food and mead worked together to relax their bodies, while the warmth of the fire and their natural sleep rhythms ensured they got the rest they needed. The following morning, after a night of recovery, they would rise, ready to face whatever challenges the day would bring, whether it was another battle or a long journey across the sea. The cycle would repeat, with the Vikings relying on the foods, rituals, and environment that helped them sleep and recover. Their post-battle routine was designed not just to fill their stomachs, but to ease their minds, prepare their bodies, and allow them to be at their best when the next fight arrived. So, next time you think about how difficult it must have been to be a Viking warrior, remember that they had strategies in place to not only survive their battles, but also to recover and prepare for the next one. Their food, their mead, their warmth, and their simple yet effective sleep practices ensured that they were always ready for whatever came next. And maybe, just maybe, we can take a cue from their rituals, whether it's the hearty meals, the relaxation, or the importance of good sleepers. We face our own daily challenges. As we continue on this journey through the Vikings' post-battle eating habits, let's shift gears a little and delve deeper into one of the most important aspects of their diet: protein. After a long, grueling battle, the Vikings were undoubtedly exhausted, and their bodies required protein to repair and rebuild the muscles that had been stressed and damaged during the fight. The amount of physical exertion required in Viking combat meant that protein was absolutely essential to their recovery process, and it's likely that their meals after battle were focused heavily on this. Vikings, much like other ancient societies, had a deep understanding of the importance of protein for physical recovery. They weren't aware of muscle fibers and amino acids in the way we are today, but they knew that consuming animal products would give their bodies the strength they needed to heal and to prepare for future conflicts. This is why meat, especially pork, beef, and mutton, played such a central role in their post-battle meals. After returning from the battlefield, a Viking warrior would likely have been treated to a hearty portion of meat. The Vikings weren't ones to waste any part of an animal. They would have made use of the entire beast, from the meat to the bones to the organs. The meat was often roasted, boiled, or sometimes even eaten raw in some cases. Roasting was a common method, and it was typically done over an open flame or in large stone ovens. While roasting might sound simple, it was an effective way to lock in flavors and moisture, giving the meat a tender yet crispy texture. The act of roasting meat over an open fire also created a communal experience, as several warriors might gather around to enjoy the feast together, sharing stories of the battle they had just fought. On the flip side, fish, too, was an essential source of protein in the Viking diet. For those living near the coast, fish would have been readily available, and Vikings were expert fishermen. Whether it was cod, salmon, or herring, fish was a staple in the Viking warrior's diet. Like meat, fish was often salted or smoked to preserve it. These preservation techniques allowed the Vikings to store food for long winters or long voyages, ensuring they had access to protein-rich food even when fresh supplies weren't available. Salted fish, especially herring, was a quick and easy post-battle meal for Vikings. Fish was rich in omega-3 fatty acids, which, as we know today, are essential for reducing inflammation and supporting brain function. Vikings didn't have the knowledge we have today, but they instinctively understood the importance of fish as a powerful food for healing. In addition, fish often formed the base of many Viking stews, mixed with root vegetables or grains, creating hearty, protein-packed dishes that were perfect for recharging after the exhausting work of battle. But let's not forget the Vikings' love for dairy. For centuries, dairy has been an essential part of many cultures, and the Vikings were no exception. They kept cows, goats, and sheep, and they made full use of these animals by milking them regularly. The Vikings weren't just drinking milk, they were turning it into butter, cheese, and yogurt. Dairy products provided them with more than just protein. They offered fat, which was just as important for replenishing energy reserves after battle. Butter, in particular, was a prized food in Viking society. It was often used in cooking and was a valuable trading commodity. Cheese, another byproduct of milk, would have been a common feature in their post-battle meals. Cheese provided an excellent source of protein and fat, and because it could be stored for long periods, it was a perfect food for times when fresh meat or fish was scarce. Vikings likely ate a variety of cheeses, from hard cheeses that could withstand the test of time to softer, fresher varieties enjoyed during feasts and celebrations. Protein, however, wasn't the only thing that the Vikings needed after battle. They also needed a good dose of energy to recover and be ready for whatever came next. This is where grains come into play. As we've mentioned before, grains were essential to the Viking diet. Barley, rye, and oats were the most common grains used in Viking meals. And after a long battle, these complex carbohydrates would have been crucial to restoring the warriors' energy levels. The Vikings ate these grains in many forms. Bread, porridge, and even pancakes were common. Bread was an everyday staple, and the Vikings would have baked their bread using rudimentary ovens or in clay pots. The bread would have been dense, made with coarser flours, and possibly even flavored with seeds or herbs. The bread wasn't meant to be fancy. It was made to fuel the body, providing slow-releasing energy to the warrior so they wouldn't feel fatigued after their meal. Porridge was another common meal for the Vikings, and it would have been made from barley, oats, or rye. It was a simple but nutritious dish, often served with a drizzle of honey or a handful of berries to provide sweetness. Porridge was a comfort. Food of sorts easy to prepare, filling, and warm, making it the perfect meal to enjoy after a long day of physical exertion. It also provided the necessary energy to fuel the warrior's body throughout the night. While today we might think of oatmeal as a breakfast food for the Vikings, porridge was versatile and could be eaten at any time of day. Its comforting qualities, combined with the fact that it was packed with essential nutrients, made it an ideal choice for recovery after battle. But we can't talk about the Viking diet without mentioning the role of vegetables. Yes, the Vikings ate vegetables too, although not in the quantities we might expect today. Vegetables were less of a central component of their diet and more of a supplement to the more hearty, protein-rich foods. Root vegetables like carrots, onions, and turnips were common, as were wild greens that could be foraged in the woods or fields. These vegetables would have been used in soups and stews, contributing to the overall nutritional balance of the Viking diet. The Vikings likely didn't consume vegetables in the same quantities that we do now, but they still understood the importance of including them for their vitamins and minerals. At the end of the day, after consuming all these hearty, nourishing foods, the Viking warrior's body would be prepared to rest and recover. Their diet, which was focused on protein, fats, carbohydrates, and vitamins, was perfectly suited to the physical demands of their brutal lifestyle. The food they consumed wasn't just about taste or pleasure, it was about survival. Each meal was designed to restore their bodies, replenish their energy, and prepare them for the next challenge. In a world where life was harsh and unpredictable, food was the fuel that kept the Viking warriors going, allowing them to rest, recover, and continue their battle-filled lives. Asterisk. After a long, exhausting battle, the Viking warrior's body would have been in dire need of a robust recovery. This recovery, in large part, came from the food they consumed, but it didn't end there. The atmosphere in which they ate and the rituals surrounding their meals also played a crucial role in helping them decompress from the day's combat and prepare for restful sleep. Let's take a closer look at the complete picture of Viking feasting and rest, focusing on the surroundings, the communal experience, and the specific ways these factors contributed to the Vikings' ability to recover effectively. Picture yourself as a Viking, fresh off the battlefield. You've just finished slaughtering your enemies, your muscles sore and bruised, your energy drained. You and your fellow warriors gather in the hall of your longhouse, a large communal structure made from wood and thatched roofs. The flickering light from a central fire casts dancing shadows on the walls, and the crackling sound of burning wood fills the air. This fire isn't just for warmth. It's the heart of the longhouse, providing light, heat, and a sense of safety. It also sets the mood for what happens next. The smell of roasting meats fills the air as your fellow warriors prepare the post-battle meal. There's no rush. Everyone knows that they need time to unwind and relax, both physically and mentally. After a meal of roasted meat, fish, and hearty grains, a sense of calm begins to spread. This isn't just because of the food, it's the environment around you that makes this moment feel like a sacred, almost meditative, ritual. The fire in the hearth isn't just lighting up the room, it's lighting up the spirit of camaraderie, trust, and security. In the aftermath of battle, this warmth is vital, and it's this social atmosphere that helps calm the warrior's mind. The Vikings understood the importance of the communal aspect of a meal. After a battle, the warriors would often sit together, sharing not just food, but stories, laughter, and camaraderie. This wasn't just about filling the stomach. It was about healing the mind and strengthening bonds with those who had fought beside you. In Viking culture, a shared meal was often a bonding experience, where tales of the battle were exchanged, and the group's sense of solidarity was reinforced. There was a deeper, psychological benefit to these meals. After a brutal conflict, the psychological toll could be just as taxing as the physical wear. The Vikings would have used their mealtime as an opportunity to regroup mentally, share their experiences, and rebuild emotional connections with each other. This was vital because, in the Viking world, life was chaotic and unpredictable, and they needed each other to survive. Bonding over food wasn't just a ritual. It was a vital practice for ensuring the survival of their social structure. But the food and camaraderie alone wouldn't have been enough for the Vikings to fully recover. Their environment, especially the warmth and security of the longhouse, was also key to helping them rest. Imagine after the meal, when the laughter and storytelling start to wind down, the fire begins to settle into a gentle crackle, and the warriors start to drift into silence. The longhouse becomes quieter, the soft murmur of voices fading into the background. The fire continues to burn, but now it casts a calm, amber glow that invites relaxation. The temperature is just right, not too hot or too cold, ensuring that the warriors are comfortable. This environment, along with the food they've eaten, begins to signal to the body that it's time to rest. The warmth from the fire, combined with the heavy meal, has a soothing effect on the body. The heat relaxes sore muscles, and the food, rich in protein and carbohydrates, prepares the body to enter a restful state. The quiet and comfort of the longhouse is almost like a lullaby, urging the warriors to unwind after the physical and emotional intensity of battle. Once the meal is finished and the atmosphere settles into a peaceful, almost serene calm, the Vikings would prepare for sleep. Unlike our modern-day beds, Viking sleeping arrangements were far from luxurious. They didn't have memory foam mattresses or fluffy pillows. Instead, they slept on simple platforms made of wood, with straw or animal skins spread over them for comfort. While this may sound uncomfortable by today's standards, these sleeping arrangements were actually ideal for the kind of rest Vikings needed. The firmness of the platform allowed the body to align properly, minimizing discomfort and pressure, points that could interfere with rest. You see, after a long day of battle, the body needs sleep that will allow the muscles to repair and the mind to recover. A soft, squishy mattress might actually hinder that process, causing unnecessary strain. The Viking warriors, accustomed to rough living, likely found this setup just right for a night's sleep, allowing their bodies to recover without any distractions or discomfort. In fact, the simplicity of the sleeping arrangements might have been another key aspect of the Viking recovery routine. The simplicity ensured that the focus wasn't on material comfort but on the essential act of rest. After a meal and a communal bonding session, sleep was the next critical step. Vikings likely fell into a deep, restorative sleep, with the warmth of the fire and the comfort of their surroundings gently lulling them into slumber. Their food, having digested and settled into their systems, helped ease the transition into this restful state. And while modern-day researchers still debate whether Vikings followed a polyphasic sleep cycle, it's likely that their sleep was segmented, perhaps with a brief waking period in the middle of the night to check on the fire or attend to other tasks. This segmented sleep might have been an adaptive response to the Viking environment, where vigilance was always necessary. In any case, the meals they consumed and the peaceful surroundings they inhabited helped ensure that when they did sleep, it was of the highest quality, enabling them to recover fully before the next day's demands. At the end of the night, after a hearty meal, a time of relaxation, and a good night's rest, the Viking warrior would awake refreshed and ready to face whatever challenges the new day brought. Their food, sleep, and environment all played interconnected roles in their recovery process. The Vikings understood the importance of all these elements working together to keep them at their best, ensuring they were always ready for whatever lay ahead, whether it was another battle, a long journey, or the daily grind of life. Their post-battle routine was built on a deep understanding of their body's needs, a knowledge that wasn't just practical but essential for survival in a harsh world. Their diet, their social rituals, and their sleeping practices were all designed to help them recover and be at their best, even after the most intense of battles. As we continue to explore the Viking warriors' post-battle routines, let's take a closer look at one of the more intriguing aspects of Viking life: the use of fermented foods and drinks, which were not only a dietary staple, but also played an important role in post-battle recovery. Vikings were far ahead of their time in many ways. particularly when it came to food preservation. They understood the benefits of fermentation long before modern nutritionists could explain the science behind it. Fermented foods such as sauerkraut, pickled herring, and fermented dairy products like yogurt were integral to the Viking diet, and for good reason. After an exhausting battle, the warrior's body was under extreme stress, and the digestive system often needed extra help in processing and absorbing the nutrients from the hearty meals they consumed. Fermented foods helped to regulate and support the digestive system, which was crucial to maintaining overall health. For the Vikings, fermented foods weren't just a way to extend the shelf life of food during the long winters. They were also an essential part of maintaining gut health and boosting immunity, which was especially important for a warrior's recovery after battle. The bacteria in fermented foods acted as natural probiotics, helping to restore the balance of good bacteria in the gut. This allowed the Vikings to process their meals more efficiently, ensuring that the nutrients from their protein-rich meats, fish, and grains were properly absorbed into their bodies to aid in recovery. But the role of fermented foods didn't stop at digestion. Fermentation also provided essential vitamins, especially B vitamins like B12, which are critical for energy production and nerve function. Given the physical toll of battle, these vitamins would have been crucial for keeping the Vikings strong and alert. The fermentation process also preserved the natural flavors of foods like vegetables and fish, allowing the Vikings to enjoy tasty and varied meals even during the harshest of winters when fresh food was scarce. Pickled herring, for example, was a common food for Vikings living along the coast. The fish was often salted and pickled to preserve it for long periods, and it could be eaten either as part of a meal or as a snack between battles. This method of preserving fish ensured that the Vikings always had a high-protein food source available, no matter the season or the conditions. The Vikings were known for their resourcefulness, and their use of fermentation was just another example of their ability to make the most out of what nature provided. Of course, fermentation wasn't limited to food. It also played a role in the Vikings' favorite drink, mead. Mead, made from fermented honey, was the drink of choice for Vikings, particularly after a battle. The Vikings were known for their love of mead, and it was often consumed in large quantities during feasts and celebrations. After a battle, drinking mead served both as a social activity and as a way to relax and unwind. Mead has a unique combination of alcohol and sugar, providing a quick source of energy and helping to soothe the warrior's nerves after a taxing day. The Vikings didn't just drink mead for the fun of it, they understood that it helped them recover. Alcohol has a relaxing effect on the body, and after a battle, it helped to calm the tense muscles and ease the mental stress that accumulated during the fight. Mead was also an excellent source of hydration and provided the body with a small boost of energy, which was crucial after the physical exhaustion that came with battle. The Vikings didn't rely solely on mead to recuperate, though. Their post-battle diet also included a variety of other drinks, many of which were designed to nourish and hydrate. One such drink was a kind of herbal tea made from wild herbs and plants. These herbal teas were known for their soothing properties and were often consumed to help with digestion and relaxation. Herbs like chamomile, lavender, and nettle were common in Viking herbal concoctions. The Vikings had a deep knowledge of the plants in their environment, and they used these herbs for a variety of purposes, from medicinal to culinary. A warm cup of herbal tea, combined with a hearty meal and some mead, would have been the perfect way for a Viking to unwind after a long day of fighting. helping them digest their food and relax their muscles in preparation for sleep. As we've seen, the Vikings didn't just rely on food to recover after battle. They understood the importance of rituals and habits that encouraged relaxation and recovery. One of the most important of these rituals was the act of sharing a meal with fellow warriors. After a battle, a Viking would gather with their comrades to eat, drink, and share stories of their exploits. This wasn't just a social activity, it was a vital part of the healing process. The shared experience of breaking bread together helped to rebuild the warrior's sense of camaraderie and trust. In Viking culture, the bond between warriors was sacred, and sharing a meal after battle helped to reinforce these connections. This sense of community and mutual support was essential for maintaining morale and ensuring that the warriors were mentally and emotionally ready for whatever came next. But even though the post-battle meal was a communal affair, it wasn't just about food and drink, it was also about the Viking environment. The Vikings lived in harsh, unforgiving climates, and their homes were designed to provide warmth and safety. The longhouses, in which Vikings gathered for meals, were built with thick walls and thatched roofs to protect them from the cold. Inside, a large central fire provided light and heat, making the space feel cozy and secure. The warmth from the fire helped to relax the warriors' muscles, which had been tensed throughout the battle. The fire also had a psychological effect, signaling to the body that it was time to rest. As the warriors ate, drank, and shared stories around the fire, the warmth and camaraderie worked together to create an atmosphere of relaxation, making it easier for them to unwind and prepare for sleep. The Vikings knew that sleep was essential for recovery, and they took steps to ensure that they could rest well after a battle. After their hearty meals, the Vikings would retire to their sleeping platforms, which were made of wooden slats covered with straw, furs, and blankets. These sleeping arrangements were simple, but they were designed to be practical and supportive, allowing the warrior's body to rest without causing unnecessary strain. Unlike modern beds, which can be too soft and lead to poor posture, the firm sleeping platforms used by the Vikings helped to align their spines and prevent discomfort during sleep. After a full day of physical exertion, a good night's sleep was the final piece of the puzzle in the Viking recovery process. By now, we've explored the various ways the Vikings fueled their bodies after battle, from the meat they ate to the mead they drank, to the herbal teas they used to aid digestion. Each part of their post-battle routine was designed to help them recover physically and mentally. The combination of food, drink, social rituals, and a comfortable environment helped the Vikings restore their strength and prepare for the next day's challenges. Their understanding of the importance of rest and relaxation, combined with their resourcefulness in using natural foods and drinks to support their recovery, made the Vikings highly resilient warriors. Now that we've explored the different facets of the Viking warriors' post-battle routine, from their hearty meals to the warming atmosphere of their longhouses, it's time to examine the deeper effects these practices had on their recovery and sleep, especially in terms of the foods they ate and how they contributed to the quality of their rest. The Vikings' physical endurance and combat skills were legendary, but their ability to recover after battle was just as important. Food, rest, and camaraderie all played pivotal roles in making sure that they were always prepared for what came next, whether it was another raid, a journey across the sea, or preparing to face yet another enemy. So, what was it about the Viking diet, combined with the environment and social aspects of their post-battle routine, that made such an impact on their recovery? To answer this, we need to take a deeper dive into the nutritional value of the foods they ate and how they were specifically tailored to help them recover and fall asleep faster. We've already discussed the importance of proteins from meats and fish, but it's worth noting that these proteins, combined with other foods, helped the Vikings rebuild their muscles and tissues after a day of intense physical combat. Protein helps repair muscle fibers that break down during physical exertion, and without a sufficient intake of protein, recovery would have been delayed. The Vikings instinctively understood this, which is why their diet was so heavily centered around animal products, whether they came from land animals like pigs, cows, and goats, or from the sea, in the form of salted fish, herring, and salmon. Each of these foods was packed with the amino acids necessary for tissue repair, and they were all integral to getting the Vikings back on their feet quickly after battle. But protein alone wasn't enough. The Vikings also needed carbohydrates to replenish their energy stores and ensure that they didn't experience a mid-sleep crash. Complex carbohydrates from grains like barley, oats, and rye were critical in providing sustained energy over long periods. These grains not only helped fuel the body's immediate energy needs, but they also assisted in keeping blood sugar levels stable throughout the night, which would prevent the Vikings from waking up feeling hungry or fatigued. Porridge made from barley or oats would have been an essential part of their post-battle diet, offering both comfort and a slow-releasing source of energy. This kind of slow-releasing energy was important because, after a day spent battling, a Viking's body would need consistent energy to restore its natural functions during sleep. A steady supply of energy would help the body repair itself overnight, and ensure that the warrior didn't wake up groggy or drained the next morning. With a combination of protein from meat and fish, and carbohydrates from grains, the Vikings had the perfect nutritional balance to support a fast recovery and a good night's sleep. However, there's more to the story than just the physical foods that the Vikings consumed. The psychological aspects of their post-battle routine were just as important for their recovery. Let's take a moment to think about how their meals were more than just a means to satisfy hunger. They were a way to build morale, foster camaraderie, and allow the Vikings to unwind mentally. After battle, the Vikings would gather around the fire, sharing their food, mead, and stories. This communal aspect of their post-battle routine was essential to their mental well-being. It wasn't just about physical recovery. It was about reconnecting with their fellow warriors and reinforcing the bonds that would keep them united during the next battle or raid. Psychologically, sharing a meal after a battle allowed the Vikings to process the emotions of the day. In a way, the feast helped to cleanse their minds of the chaos and violence they had just experienced, allowing them to unwind and relax in a safe environment. This social ritual of eating together also had a calming effect on their nervous systems. As they relaxed around the fire, telling tales and celebrating victories, the Viking warriors would have been able to transition from the high-stress, fight-or-flight mode of battle to a more restful state. This shift in mindset was essential for sleep, as stress and anxiety can hinder the body's ability to fall asleep and stay asleep. By engaging in a relaxing social ritual after battle, the Vikings helped their bodies and minds enter a state of readiness for the deep, restorative sleep they so desperately needed. While we've discussed how the food and social rituals worked in tandem to promote physical recovery, we can't ignore the important role that the environment played in ensuring that the Viking warriors got the sleep they needed. Where they ate and slept was designed to provide warmth and comfort in the harsh northern climate. The fire in the center of the longhouse was more than just a heat source. It was a focal point around which the warriors could gather and relax. The soft, flickering glow of the fire had a calming effect on the body, signaling to the brain that it was time to wind down and prepare for sleep. The warmth from the fire also helped relax tense muscles, easing the soreness that would have accumulated after a day spent fighting. The longhouse itself was designed to be insulated from the cold, providing a secure, peaceful environment where the Vikings could rest without being disturbed by the elements outside. In a way, the Vikings' homes were their sanctuaries, a place where they could not only recover physically from battle, but also mentally and emotionally from the trauma of conflict. Now, let's touch on the role of sleep itself in Viking recovery. Sleep, as we know today, is essential for both physical and mental recovery. During sleep, the body repairs itself, regenerating cells and rebuilding muscle tissue. Sleep is also vital for the brain to process memories, consolidate learning, and regulate emotions. The Vikings understood this intuitively, even if they didn't have the scientific knowledge we have today. After a battle, a good night's sleep was essential for them to wake up ready to face whatever came next. Their diet, environment, and rituals all worked together to ensure that they could achieve the deep, restorative sleep needed to recover fully. The food they ate provided the necessary nutrients for healing. The warmth and comfort of their environment helped them relax, and the social rituals of sharing a meal with fellow warriors gave them the psychological release they needed to ease into sleep. As we move through this exploration of the Viking post-battle routine, it's clear that their ability to recover quickly and get restful sleep was not just a matter of eating well or sleeping in comfort. It was about creating a balanced environment, one that addressed not only the physical demands of battle, but also the emotional and psychological toll it took. By combining nourishing food, social rituals, and a supportive environment, the Vikings ensured that they were always prepared for the next challenge. Their post-battle recovery practices may have been simple, but they were highly effective, helping them to recover quickly and be ready to fight again when needed. Perhaps there's something we can learn from these ancient warriors, whose ability to recharge after a fight was just as important as their strength in battle. Continuing our deep dive into the Viking warriors' post-battle recovery, it's crucial to examine how the physical environment and the mental state of the Viking helped influence their sleep and recovery process. After a long day of battle, the mind and body needed not only nourishment, but also the right kind of environment to rest. Vikings, like all warriors, would have known the importance of having a space that encouraged both physical relaxation and mental tranquility. The long where they would gather to eat and sleep provided the perfect setting for this. These longhouses were built with thick wooden walls and thatched roofs, designed to protect the inhabitants from the harsh northern winds and cold. The longhouse wasn't just a shelter, it was a sanctuary where the weary warrior could feel safe and protected. The central fire, which burned throughout the day and night, created warmth, comfort, and a sense of security. After the chaotic, adrenaline-fueled rush of battle, stepping into a warm, quiet space with the glow of the fire, the smell of roasting meat, and the sounds of fellow warriors sharing stories of the day would have helped ease the body and mind into a restful state. The warmth from the fire would have been particularly beneficial in aiding relaxation. The body's muscles, which were strained from the intense physical activity of combat, would start to loosen and relax as they sat by the fire. Heat is known for its ability to increase blood flow and relax tight muscles, and the heat from the fire would have been an excellent aid in reducing the soreness from battle. The psychological impact of the longhouse setting is just as important as the physical. As the Vikings sat together around the fire, eating, drinking, and sharing stories. They were participating in a vital ritual of communal bonding. This wasn't simply about passing time. It was about rebuilding emotional and social connections after the chaos of battle. The Vikings understood that to be an effective fighting force, they needed strong relationships with their fellow warriors. Sharing a meal and engaging in storytelling allowed them to process the day's events, vent their frustrations, and celebrate victories. These rituals helped calm the mind and reduce any lingering stress or anxiety, making it easier for the warrior to sleep deeply. In many ways, this communal meal helped restore balance to both body and mind. The connection with others, the sense of safety, and the ritual of eating together created a calming atmosphere that was critical for transitioning from the intense, high-energy state of battle into a peaceful, restful state that allowed for proper sleep. As we explore the role of food in this recovery process, it's interesting to consider how Vikings also utilized food to soothe the soul. Yes, food was functional, designed to refuel the body and help it recover from the day's exertions, but it was also a source of comfort and pleasure. After a battle, Vikings weren't only looking for sustenance, they were looking for the mental and emotional support that came with a satisfying, hearty meal. The foods they consumed after battle: roasted meats, salted fish, hearty porridge, and a drink of mead weren't just designed to fuel their bodies. They were designed to provide pleasure, warmth, and comfort. The meat was rich and flavorful, often slow-cooked to perfection, with the smell of roasting filling the longhouse. The mead, which was often consumed in large quantities, provided a sweet, warming kick that helped to relax the body and mind. The drink, fermented from honey, water, and sometimes fruits or spices, had the dual effect of providing a mild form of intoxication and acting as a social lubricant. It helped Vikings unwind after battle, lowering stress levels and allowing them to relax before sleep. It wasn't just about how food nourished the body, it was about how it nourished the spirit, offering comfort in a world that was often unpredictable and violent. In many ways, food after battle provided a sense of normalcy and security, a moment to savor the present and bond with others after the chaos of war. In addition to food and mead, the presence of fermented foods in the Viking diet served an additional purpose. They helped with digestion and ensured that the warrior's body was properly processing the large amounts of food it was receiving. Foods like sauerkraut, pickled herring, and fermented dairy products were packed with probiotics, which aided digestion and helped balance the gut microbiome. Good gut health was essential for overall well-being, and the Vikings understood, even without modern scientific knowledge, that their bodies needed help processing the rich, protein-heavy meals they consumed after battle. These fermented foods helped to ensure that the body absorbed the nutrients from their meals efficiently, providing them with the energy they needed to heal and rest. It's remarkable to think that something as simple as pickling could have such a profound impact on recovery. In a world where food preservation was a matter of survival, fermentation wasn't just a method of extending shelf life, which was a necessary part of the Viking recovery routine, contributing to both physical health and mental well-being. As we move further into the Viking warriors' post-battle routine, we should also consider the Viking warriors' sleep patterns. While we know that they ate hearty meals and drank mead to prepare for sleep, there's more to the story of how they achieved rest. Sleep, as we know today, is essential for physical recovery, and Vikings, much like any other warriors, needed sleep that allowed their bodies to heal. The warriors' sleep environment, in particular, was crucial for achieving the deep rest necessary to recover from the day's exertion. The longhouse, while rustic, provided a sense of safety and security, which is critical for achieving good quality sleep. The warmth of the fire, combined with the comfort of their sleeping platforms made from wood and covered with animal furs or straw, was far from luxurious, but it was functional. There's something to be said about the simplicity of these sleep arrangements. Modern sleep experts suggest that overly soft mattresses and pillows can disrupt proper spinal alignment during sleep. The Vikings' hard, flat surfaces may have contributed to better posture and more restful sleep, as they were forced to sleep in positions that allowed for natural spinal alignment. The Viking warriors' sleep may have been segmented, with periods of waking throughout the night, but the environment and the rituals surrounding sleep helped to ensure that the sleep they did get was deep and restorative. This sleep would have been essential for muscle repair, mental recovery, and replenishing energy stores. In the end, the Viking warriors' post-battle routine was about much more than just eating and sleeping. It was a holistic recovery process that incorporated food, environment, and social interaction, all designed to prepare the warrior for whatever challenges awaited them in the morning. The lessons we can take from the Vikings are clear. Recovery isn't just about what you eat or how much you sleep. It's about creating a balanced environment where both body and mind can rest, recharge, and be ready to face the next challenge. While their post-battle routine may seem simple by today's standards, the Vikings understood the importance of these elements working together to ensure their survival, strength, and resilience. From the warmth of the longhouse to the nourishing meals and the camaraderie of shared rituals, the Viking warriors knew that recovery was a multifaceted process, one that was essential to their success as fierce and capable warriors. As we continue to uncover the complexities of the Viking warriors' post-battle recovery, let's focus on the profound connection between their food and their mental clarity. After a brutal battle, the Viking needed not just physical rest, but also mental relaxation to fully recuperate and be ready for the challenges ahead. The body's physical exhaustion after a fight is obvious, but what about the mental fatigue? Vikings fought in intense, often brutal battles, and the psychological toll could be just as taxing as the physical one. This is where their carefully structured post-battle routine came into play. After the violence and chaos of battle, the Viking needed a peaceful moment to reset mentally and emotionally. This reset began with food, which acted not just as a source of nourishment, but also as a means of easing the mind. Consider the Vikings' meal after battle: meat, fish, bread, and meat, which offering both sustenance and comfort. Meats like pork and beef would have provided much needed protein, while bread and grains would replenish the energy reserves. But beyond the food itself, there was something therapeutic about the act of eating it, especially in a communal setting. The Vikings' communal meal was an important psychological tool in post-battle recovery. After fighting side by side with their comrades, the act of sitting together and eating was a form of solidarity. It was not just about sharing food, but also sharing the weight of the battle. The Vikings knew that combat wasn't just a physical test, it was a psychological one too. In the aftermath, having a space where warriors could relax and talk through their experiences allowed them to process the stress, sorrow, and triumph of the battle. Storytelling was a major part of Viking culture, and it was during these post-battle meals that stories of the day's events were recounted. These narratives, filled with both triumphs and defeats, helped the warriors mentally prepare for whatever would come next, while also giving them a moment of collective pride and unity. The mere act of sharing a meal after battle allowed the Vikings to create a space where they could begin to heal not only their bodies, but also their spirits. and mead, their drink of choice, was a large part of this mental reset. Mead was not just a drink, it was a social lubricant, a way to relax the mind and ease the tensions that had built up throughout the day. The alcohol in mead has a sedative effect, and combined with the warmth of the fire and the hearty meal, it helped to calm the nerves and transition the warriors from the alertness needed for battle to the relaxation necessary for sleep. But even the food that Vikings consumed post-battle had a deeper psychological purpose. Fermented foods, like pickled herring or sauerkraut, were not only good for digestion, but also played an important role in enhancing mood. Fermented foods are rich in probiotics, which have been shown to influence mood and mental health by promoting the growth of healthy bacteria in the gut. This is important because, as modern science shows, the gut and the brain are deeply connected. What you eat can affect how you feel. For the Vikings, the presence of these fermented foods in their meals wasn't just about good digestion. It was about ensuring that their minds could also recover from the emotional and psychological strain of battle. This focus on both mental and physical health was crucial in a society where survival was not guaranteed, and warriors needed to be able to fight and think clearly at a moment's notice. With the food consumed and the mental tension beginning to dissipate, the next critical step in the Vikings' post-battle routine was the process of preparing for sleep. In addition to the food, mead, and communal bonding, the environment had a significant impact on the Viking warriors' ability to fall asleep and recover. In the longhouse, where the Vikings gathered for both meals and sleep, the warmth from the central fire, the smell of roasting meats, and the sound of friendly conversation created an atmosphere that was conducive to relaxation and rest. The fire wasn't just a source of heat, it was a source of comfort, drawing people together and providing a sense of security. In the days following battle, this warmth would have been vital for the Viking warriors to unwind. They had just been in a world of chaos, violence, and adrenaline, and the fire served as a psychological signal that the battle had ended, and it was time to let go of that stress. As the evening wore on and the fire burned lower, the warriors would begin to settle into the rhythms of the longhouse. Some would curl up on their straw-covered platforms, while others would continue to share stories or sing songs. The act of sleeping after such a day wasn't just a biological need, it was a social and psychological process as well. The Viking sleeping arrangements themselves were surprisingly simple yet effective. Unlike the soft, overly plush mattresses we might use today, the Vikings slept on wooden platforms, often covered with straw or animal furs. This might seem uncomfortable by modern standards, but the Vikings knew what they needed. The firmness of the surface allowed for better spinal alignment and a deeper, more restorative sleep. After a day of combat, sleep wasn't just about shutting the eyes and resting. It was about allowing the body to recover and repair itself. A firm sleeping surface helps to prevent any misalignment of the spine, ensuring that the body could rest in its natural state. When paired with the warmth of the fire and the comfort of the longhouse environment, the simplicity of the Viking bed provided everything the warrior needed to restore their body and mind. Additionally, the Vikings' sleep cycles may have been different from what we're used to today. Historians still debate whether the Vikings practiced polyphasic sleeps, sleeping in two distinct cycles throughout the night, instead of one long, uninterrupted period. Polyphasic sleep was common in pre-industrial societies, where people often woke in the middle of the night to attend to various tasks, such as tending the fire or checking on their livestock. This segmented sleep pattern could have worked well for Vikings, who needed to remain alert and prepared for sudden raids or attacks. The presence of the fire likely played a role in this as well. The fire was not only a source of warmth and light, but also a form of protection. Its flickering glow would have helped to create a sense of security, enabling the Vikings to sleep more soundly despite the constant vigilance required in their world. After such a demanding day of physical exertion, the Viking warrior needed the right combination of food, drink, social interaction, and environment to ensure that they could fully recover. The post-battle ritual of eating hearty food, sharing mead, telling stories, and finally settling into the warmth of the longhouse created an atmosphere that allowed for both physical and mental recovery. The Vikings understood that recovery wasn't just about healing the body, it was about resetting the mind, calming the spirit, and preparing for the next challenge. The balance of nourishment, relaxation, and comfort played an integral role in ensuring that they were always ready for whatever lay ahead. These practices weren't just about surviving, they were about thriving, ensuring that the Viking warrior could continue to perform at their best in battle day after day. As we continue to explore the Viking warriors' post-battle recovery routine, it's worth noting that their diet wasn't solely designed for immediate recovery, it was also designed for longevity and endurance. The Vikings, like any great civilization, understood the importance of sustaining their bodies over the long term. They didn't just need to recover after one battle, they needed to ensure their bodies could endure the repeated stresses of combat, long voyages, and harsh living conditions. The foods they ate were not only tailored to immediate recovery, but also to long-term health and vitality. This included the maintenance of muscle mass, bone health, immune function, and overall energy levels, all of which were essential for a warrior who needed to be in peak condition at all times. The diet the Vikings followed was rich in nutrients that helped them stay strong and healthy, regardless of the season or the intensity of the battles they faced. As we've discussed, their primary sources of protein came from meats like pork, lamb, and beef, but their diet also included an abundance of fish, which was a key staple, especially in coastal regions. Fish, particularly fatty fish like salmon and herring, provided the Vikings with vital omega-3 fatty acids. These healthy fats play a crucial role in reducing inflammation, which is especially important for someone recovering from the intense physical strain of battle. Omega-3s have been shown to support joint health, promote cardiovascular function, and even help reduce the soreness that often comes with heavy physical activity. For the Vikings, fish wasn't just a quick meal, it was a critical food that supported long-term health, especially considering the physical toll of their lifestyle. The Vikings were also quite savvy when it came to using herbs and plants for both nutritional and medicinal purposes. In addition to the usual staples like meat and fish, they would often forage for wild herbs and vegetables to supplement their diet. Common herbs like garlic, dill, juniper, and thyme were frequently used to add flavor to meals, but they also had medicinal properties. Garlic, for instance, is well known for its ability to boost immune function and fight infections, while juniper berries were used as a natural remedy for digestive issues. By incorporating these herbs into their meals, the Vikings ensured that their diets were not only flavorful, but also fortified with natural ingredients that could support their immune systems and aid in digestion. These herbs also provided essential vitamins and minerals that would have been difficult to get from animal products alone, making them an important part of the Vikings' long-term nutrition. It's fascinating to think that the Vikings, with their limited scientific knowledge, understood how to use the natural environment to their advantage, selecting plants and herbs that could support their health and helped them recover from the stresses of battle and harsh living conditions. Whether they were foraging in the wild or cultivating simple gardens, the Vikings' use of herbs was just another example of their resourcefulness and ability to thrive in a challenging environment. Another aspect of the Viking diet that was vital for long-term health was their consumption of fermented foods. We've already touched on how fermented foods helped with digestion and immunity, but it's important to emphasize just how essential these foods were to their overall well-being. The Vikings relied heavily on fermented fish, sauerkraut, and fermented dairy products like yogurt and cheese. Fermented foods are a rich source of probiotics, which are beneficial bacteria that help balance the gut microbiome. A healthy gut is essential for proper digestion and nutrient absorption. And since the Vikings' diet was often heavy in protein and fats, it's likely that fermented foods helped their bodies break down and process these nutrients more efficiently. A healthy gut microbiome also supports immune function, which would have been essential in a world where infections and illnesses were rampant. It's amazing to think that the Vikings, without the benefit of modern science, knew the importance of maintaining gut health and used fermented foods to ensure that their digestive systems functioned properly and that they could recover quickly after battle. In addition to the foods themselves, the Viking way of life also included practices that helped to maintain overall health and vitality. Physical activity, for instance, was a constant part of their routine. Even after a battle, the Vikings didn't simply rest in the traditional sense. They were always active, whether it was through further training, repairing weapons, or preparing for their next raid. Their physical activity wasn't just limited to combat. It extended to their daily lives as they engaged in physical labor like farming, fishing, and maintaining their boats. These activities helped to keep their bodies strong and in prime condition for battle, ensuring that they could recover from one conflict and be ready for the next. The Vikings' active lifestyle, combined with their diet, created a perfect balance of nutrition and exercise that allowed them to maintain a high level of strength and resilience throughout their lives. The Vikings' diet also reflected their understanding of how to fuel their bodies in times of scarcity. During the winter months, when fresh food was scarce and raids were less frequent, the Vikings relied on preserved foods like salted meats, dried fish, and fermented vegetables. These preserved foods were rich in nutrients and could be stored for long periods, ensuring that the Vikings had access to sustenance even in the most challenging times. The Vikings were masters of food preservation, using techniques like salting, drying, and smoking to keep their food safe for consumption during the winter. These methods not only helped to extend the shelf life of food, but also allowed the Vikings to continue eating the same nutrient-dense foods that helped them recover after battle, even when fresh food wasn't available. Interestingly, the Vikings also used their food not just for survival, but for social and ceremonial purposes. Feasts were a central part of Viking culture, particularly after a successful raid or battle. These feasts were not only a time for the warriors to share their victory, but also a way to strengthen the bonds between them. The act of sharing a meal after a battle was a way for the warriors to celebrate their accomplishments, honor their fallen comrades, and reinforce their sense of unity. This communal aspect of their diet helped to build camaraderie and foster a sense of belonging, which was vital in a warrior society where survival depended on the strength of the group. These feasts often included mead, roasted meats, fish, and grains, and were accompanied by storytelling, singing, and other forms of entertainment. The feasts were not just about eating, they were about reinforcing the social fabric of Viking life, and ensuring that the warriors felt connected to one another and their shared purpose. While we've covered the practical aspects of the Viking diet, it's clear that the Vikings' approach to food and recovery was deeply intertwined with their culture and way of life. Their diet wasn't just about nourishing the body, it was about ensuring that their warriors were always ready for the next challenge. Whether that meant preparing for a raid or recovering from the battle they had just fought. The Vikings understood the importance of nutrition, rest, and social connection in the recovery process. And they created a balanced, holistic routine that allowed them to stay strong, resilient, and ready to face whatever lay ahead. From the foods they ate to the environment they created, everything was designed with the purpose of ensuring that the Viking warrior could recover fully, both physically and mentally, after each battle. This balance of nourishment, rest, and social bonding made the Viking warrior not just a fierce fighter, but a resilient one, capable of enduring the many hardships of life in a dangerous and unpredictable world. As we continue exploring the Viking warriors' post-battle recovery, it's crucial to understand that the foods they consumed were not just about fueling the body, they were also about reinforcing Viking values, strengthening their resolve, and preparing their minds for the future. After all, a Viking warrior wasn't just a physical force. They were a part of a warrior culture deeply ingrained with values of honor, loyalty, and brotherhood. The shared meals, particularly those after a battle, were not merely about eating, they were about affirming these values, reinforcing relationships, and maintaining the mental strength necessary to face future battles. These communal meals were essential for the warriors to recenter themselves, both physically and mentally, ensuring that they could take on whatever challenges were to come. There's something deeply comforting about the idea of warriors coming together after a hard-fought battle, sitting around the fire, enjoying hearty food, and, in a way, resetting their minds after the violence and chaos of the day. The act of sharing a meal wasn't just about nutrition, it was about connecting, reflecting on the events that transpired, and coming together as a team. The Vikings' food wasn't simply fuel, it was a communal bonding tool that allowed them to repair their mental states, fortify their spirits, and affirm their camaraderie. At the heart of these meals was mead, a drink with deep cultural significance. Mead wasn't just a source of alcohol or a way to relax, it was symbolic. Mead was often consumed during moments of triumph and celebration, marking a warrior's strength and resilience. After a battle, drinking mead wasn't only about relaxation. It was also about celebrating survival and honoring the warriors who fought alongside you. Mead helped ease the mental toll of battle by providing a means of unwinding, but it also served as a social catalyst, creating an environment where the warriors could come together, share their experiences, and bond over the shared victory or defeat. In this sense, mead was more than a beverage, it was a tool for mental recovery, helping to wash away the tension and violence of battle, while fostering unity and togetherness among the warriors. Mead's effect wasn't just physical, it allowed for a mental reset, helping warriors shift from combat mode to a more relaxed, communal state, which would allow them to rest properly afterward. This shared drink and meal not only helped them relax, but also encouraged an environment where emotional recovery could take place. This ability to bond with fellow warriors through food and drink helped ease the often brutal mental stress caused by a lifetime of battle. When we consider the diet of the Vikings, it becomes apparent that their recovery routine wasn't just about fixing the body, it was about ensuring that the mind and spirit were fortified as well. As we've discussed, the Viking diet was rich in proteins, fats, and carbohydrates that helped to rebuild muscles and replenish energy. But in addition to the physical benefits, this diet was also crafted to support the warrior's mental state. The Vikings understood that after a battle, it wasn't just the muscles that needed healing, it was the mind. The rituals around the food, the mead, and the camaraderie were just as important as the nutritional value. The Vikings were constantly under pressure to maintain their fighting strength and stay mentally sharp, and their post-battle meals were a reflection of this need. It wasn't just about getting by, it was about preparing for the next challenge, staying sharp and ensuring that they had the mental and physical resilience to face what lay ahead. These meals played a vital role in ensuring that the Vikings remained psychologically and emotionally strong. When a warrior sat down after battle, they weren't just refueling, they were reaffirming their place in the warrior brotherhood, strengthening their sense of identity and preparing for the future, both physically and mentally. Another aspect to consider in Viking recovery was the role of sleep itself. Sleep was essential for the restoration of both body and mind, and the Vikings' approach to sleep was based on the understanding that the body needed to recover from the physical strain of battle. The sleep environment they created for themselves was designed to support deep, restorative sleep, which was critical to the healing process. As we've already seen, Viking sleep was likely segmented, with periods of waking in the middle of the night. This polyphasic sleep pattern was common in many pre-industrial societies, and it allowed the body to rest in stages, ensuring that the Vikings could maintain the level of vigilance required in their dangerous world. The longhouses where they slept provided both warmth and protection, creating a comfortable environment for rest. The fire, which burned throughout the night, not only kept them warm but also created a sense of security. For the Viking warrior, sleep wasn't simply a time to rest, it was a time to heal. The warmth of the fire, combined with their simple yet effective bedding, would have allowed the body to recover from the physical strain of battle. The firm sleeping platforms, which may have seemed uncomfortable by modern standards, actually provided better support for the body and allowed for a more restful sleep, free from the strains caused by overly soft beds. This combination of warmth, comfort, and security allowed the Viking warrior to enter a deep, restorative sleep, helping them recover both physically and mentally. Sleep, however, wasn't just about physical restoration. It was also about the mental reset that was required after a battle. The stress of combat could leave a warrior mentally exhausted, and without the proper rest, this fatigue could linger and affect performance in future battles. This is why the Vikings placed such importance on creating an environment that was conducive to sleep. The longhouse, with its warmth, security, and social atmosphere, was a place where the warrior could fully unwind and allow their mind to relax. The quiet moments of rest, after a full day of combat and social bonding, allowed the Viking to process the events of the day, reflect on their actions, and prepare mentally for the next day's challenges. In this way, sleep was not just about the physical body, it was an essential part of the mental recovery process. The post-battle routine of a Viking warrior was a delicate balance of nourishment, relaxation, and social bonding, all designed to ensure that they could recover from the physical and mental toll of battle. The food they consumed was nourishing for both the body and the mind. The environment they slept in supported deep recovery, and the social rituals that surrounded their meals helped them reset emotionally. Together, these elements allowed the Viking warrior to restore their strength, fortify their spirit, and prepare for whatever lay ahead. The Vikings' ability to recover after battle was a testament to their understanding of the importance of rest nutrition, and social support. In a world that was harsh, unpredictable, and often violent, these practices were essential to ensuring that the Vikings remained strong, resilient, and ready to face whatever came next. Asterisk. As we continue to examine the Viking warriors' post-battle recovery, we must turn our attention to the critical role of ritual and tradition in their process of healing. While food, drink, and rest were crucial elements in the recovery process, the Vikings understood that the mind and spirit needed attention as well. The rituals that surrounded their meals and their rest were just as important as the physical sustenance they received. These rituals helped to reintegrate the warriors into their social and emotional group after the psychological stress of battle. The Vikings had a rich tradition of storytelling, song, and celebration, which played a huge role in post-battle recovery. After a fight, it wasn't just about eating and sleeping. These were opportunities for the warriors to reconnect with one another, reaffirm their bonds, and re-establish a sense of purpose and unity. Once the battle was over and the blood had been shed, the warrior needed a space to process what had happened, not just physically, but emotionally as well. Rituals like storytelling were important for the Vikings because they allowed them to discuss the battle, share their experiences, and express the emotions they might not have had time to process during the heat of the fight. Whether through spoken word or song, these stories would recount the battle, honoring fallen comrades and celebrating victories. This communal act of storytelling helped the warriors grieve, reflect, and bond with one another. It also served as a way to remind them of their shared identity as warriors. Being a Viking wasn't just about fighting, it was about being part of a larger community, a brotherhood that supported each other through both the good and the bad times. By engaging in storytelling, they reinforced their identity as part of this greater cause and gained strength from the connection they shared. After all, in a world that was constantly in flux, where battle could come at any time, having a sense of belonging and purpose was essential. The rituals that followed a battle allowed the Vikings to reconnect with their comrades and recharge their emotional batteries, enabling them to move forward with renewed energy. In addition to storytelling, mead drinking was an important part of the Viking ritual. As we've discussed, mead wasn't just a drink, it was a cultural symbol. After a battle, it would be shared among the warriors to celebrate the triumph and to mark the end of the fight. It also helped calm the mind, as alcohol generally has a relaxing effect on the nervous system. The act of sharing mead was a social and emotional experience, an opportunity for the warriors to bond over their shared victories and losses. It was a time to raise their cups and honor one another for the battle they had fought together. There's something deeply symbolic about this act of drinking together after a battle. It wasn't simply about drinking for the sake of it. It was about marking a shared experience and fortifying the relationships that held their society together. These moments were vital for the Vikings, especially in a society where survival depended on strong relationships and mutual trust. Along with mead and storytelling, another important element in the Vikings' post-battle rituals was music. Vikings used music in various forms, whether it was the sound of a harp, the rhythmic pounding of drums, or the singing of songs to mark important events like battle victories. Music served as a means of celebration, relaxation, and, in some ways, an emotional release. After a battle, listening to music or singing songs together would have been incredibly therapeutic, helping to release the tension that had built up during the fight. Music has long been shown to have therapeutic effects on the body, from lowering blood pressure to reducing stress and anxiety. And for the Vikings, it was a powerful tool for emotional healing. It was often through music that the warriors could express their grief, joy, and shared triumphs in a way that words alone could not convey. Songs would often tell the stories of battles, of heroes, and of warriors who had fallen in battle, which helped the group process loss and reaffirm their identity as part of the Viking tradition. This form of emotional catharsis was essential for helping the Vikings maintain their mental fortitude, especially after facing the horrors of battle. Another important aspect of Viking culture that played into their recovery process was the practice of honoring their fallen comrades. Death was an ever-present reality in Viking life, and after a battle, it was customary to honor the fallen warriors. This practice helped the living warriors cope with loss, a difficult but necessary part of their world. After a battle, the body of the fallen would often be laid to rest with proper ceremonies, and offerings might be made to the gods. These rituals served not only to honor the dead, but also to provide a sense of closure for the warriors who survived. This ceremony marked the end of the battle and allowed the survivors to move forward, knowing that they had honored their comrades properly. The rituals surrounding death also reinforced the warriors' understanding of their place in the larger cycle of life and death, which helped them deal with the constant risk they faced on the battlefield. These acts of respect and closure helped provide emotional healing, allowing the warriors to move forward with clarity and renewed strength. The act of honoring the dead was closely tied to the Viking concept of fate. The Vikings believed that their lives were guided by fate, and that the end of one's life in battle was an honorable death. This understanding of fate helped the warriors accept death as an inevitable part of life, allowing them to face each battle with courage. The rituals after battle, such as honoring the fallen and celebrating survival, reinforced the Viking belief that their lives, though fleeting, were meaningful and purposeful. This belief gave them the strength to continue fighting, knowing that their actions were part of something larger than themselves. As we've seen throughout this journey, the Vikings understood that recovery was not just about physical sustenance, it was about mental, emotional, and spiritual healing as well. The communal meals, the rituals of mead, drinking, storytelling, music, and honoring the dead all played crucial roles in helping the warriors restore their spirits. These practices helped the warriors deal with the emotional and psychological toll of battle, allowing them to recover more fully and face the next challenge with strength and clarity. The Vikings' post-battle routine was not just about survival, it was about thriving in a world that constantly demanded more from them. By focusing on the whole person body, mind, and spirit, the Vikings created a system that allowed them to recover quickly and be ready for whatever lay ahead. Their ability to heal both physically and emotionally was a key factor in their resilience as warriors. And it's a lesson that can resonate with us today. In a world that often demands much of us, it's important to remember the value of recovery, not just in terms of physical health, but in emotional and mental well-being as well. Just as the Vikings understood, true strength comes not from the ability to fight, but from the ability to recover, heal, and move forward. Asterisk. As we reflect on the Viking warriors' post-battle recovery and the multifaceted approach they took to restore their body, mind, and spirit, it's important to explore the role of nature and the environment in their recovery process. The Vikings were deeply connected to the land around them, and their relationship with nature played a key role in their physical and mental resilience. Whether they were in the forests of Scandinavia, on the shores of the North Sea, or on the windswept plains The Vikings relied on the natural world not just for sustenance, but for emotional and psychological healing as well. After a battle, the Viking warriors would have needed an environment that could help them both recover physically and provide them with a sense of peace. The longhouse, with its warmth from the central fire, the smell of food, and the shared camaraderie of fellow warriors, provided the perfect environment for relaxation. However, nature itself also contributed to their recovery, providing tranquility, solace, and mental clarity. The sound of the wind in the trees, the rhythm of the waves crashing against the shore, and the quiet stillness of the surrounding wilderness would have all played their part in helping the warriors decompress and transition from the intensity of battle to a state of rest. These natural elements helped to calm the mind, lower stress levels, and create a peaceful atmosphere that supported deep, restorative sleep. For the Vikings, the land was not just something to be conquered, it was a source of spiritual and emotional support. Their connection to nature was deeply spiritual, and they believed that the gods and the natural world had a direct influence on their lives. In Viking mythology, nature was sacred, and the gods were believed to live within the forests, rivers, and mountains that the Vikings traversed. After a battle, the warrior might have sought solace in nature, whether it was by walking through the forest, sitting by a river, or even contemplating the vast open sky. This connection to the natural world helped to restore a sense of peace and purpose, allowing the warrior to reflect on the battle, mourn the loss of comrades, and gather strength for the next challenge. The Viking warriors were part of a world that was constantly in flux, with unpredictable weather, long winters, and harsh conditions. Yet, they found comfort in the natural environment, which offered both physical sustenance and emotional healing. Even the act of foraging for herbs and plants in the wild was a way to reconnect with nature, to find nourishment both for the body and for the soul. It is through this deep connection with nature that the Vikings were able to maintain their mental resilience and adapt to the constant pressures of battle, survival, and life in a harsh world. Beyond the spiritual and emotional healing that nature provided, the environment also contributed to the physical recovery of the Viking warrior. The cold air of the northern regions helped to reduce inflammation and muscle soreness, allowing the body to recover from the physical toll of battle. The Vikings didn't have access to modern physical therapy or recovery methods, but the natural environment provided its own remedies. For example, the cold temperatures could have helped soothe sore muscles, acting as a natural form of cryotherapy, similar to how athletes today use ice baths to reduce inflammation and accelerate recovery. Additionally, the constant physical activity in nature, whether it was chopping wood, foraging for food, or maintaining the longhouse, kept the Vikings in good physical condition, ensuring that their bodies were always ready for battle. The physical labor they engaged in was integral to their long-term health, providing them with the strength and endurance needed to survive in a harsh, demanding world. The Viking lifestyle, which included daily physical activity, a nutrient-dense diet, and a strong connection to nature, ensured that the warriors were always in a state of readiness, prepared for the next challenge that would inevitably come. The environment also played a significant role in the Viking warriors' ability to recover mentally and emotionally. After the chaos of battle, the quiet solitude of nature allowed the warrior to reflect on the events of the day, process their feelings, and find a sense of closure. Many Viking warriors would have spent time in the wilderness, whether on a long journey or in moments of quiet solitude, contemplating their experiences and finding peace in the stillness of nature. This time alone allowed the warrior to distance themselves from the trauma of battle and find a mental space to heal, The peacefulness of nature served as a counterbalance to the chaos of war, helping the warrior clear their mind, gain perspective, and reframe the experience of battle, whether it was through solitary walks, moments of meditation, or simply sitting by a stream. Nature provided the warrior with the opportunity to reconnect with themselves and recharge their mental energy. Additionally, the Vikings' relationship with the natural world extended beyond personal healing. It was also integral to their social and cultural identity. Nature provided the Vikings with the resources they needed to survive and thrive, and it was a constant source of inspiration in their myths, stories, and beliefs. The gods of Viking mythology were deeply connected to nature. Thor, the god of thunder, was believed to wield the power of the storm and protect the natural world, while Freya, the goddess of love and fertility, was associated with the harvest and the cycle of life. The Vikings saw themselves as stewards of the land, deeply intertwined with the rhythms of nature. This connection to the land, the sea, and the sky helped ground the Vikings in a world that was constantly changing, providing them with a sense of stability and purpose. After a battle, the warrior could find strength not only in their community and their food, but in their connection to the earth itself, reminding them that they were part of something larger and more enduring than any single battle or raid. The Vikings' post-battle recovery routine was about more than just the physical act of eating, drinking, and resting. It was about restoring balance, balancing the physical, mental, and emotional aspects of the warrior's life. The food they consumed, the mead they drank, the social rituals they engaged in, and the environment they inhabited all worked together to ensure that the Viking warrior was not only physically prepared for the next battle, but mentally and emotionally fortified as well. This holistic approach to recovery, which took into account the warrior's relationship with their comrades, their environment, and their internal state, allowed the Vikings to recover quickly and effectively after a battle. They understood that survival wasn't just about fighting, it was about maintaining strength, resilience, and a deep connection to the world around them. The environment, nature, and rituals played a central role in their recovery, helping them regain balance after the tumult of battle and giving them the strength they needed to move forward. As we continue to explore the post-battle recovery of the Viking warrior, it's important to understand that their resilience wasn't built on just one ritual or food source, was the sum of various practices, beliefs, and habits that worked together to ensure the Vikings remained at their peak. The careful blending of nutrition, rest, social bonding, rituals, and their relationship with nature made up a holistic system that kept the warrior's body and mind prepared for whatever lay ahead. This wasn't just recovery for recovery's sake, was a deliberate and structured routine aimed at maintaining the strength and perseverance required to survive in an unforgiving world. As we examine the Viking warriors' recovery after battle, we can see that their culture and daily practices were a reflection of their deep understanding of human need and survival. Food was a significant part of this recovery, but the Vikings knew that what they ate had to work synergistically with their social habits and environment to provide true restoration. They understood that feeding the body was just the beginning. Warriors' spirit, mind, and relationships needed just as much attention. From the moment a Viking warrior returned from battle, every aspect of their recovery was focused on reintegrating them into their community and preparing them for the challenges they would undoubtedly face in the future. Food, of course, played a crucial role in this process. As we've already discussed, after a battle, the Viking warrior would consume a hearty meal rich in protein, fats, and carbohydrates, ensuring that their body had the nutrients it needed for muscle repair and energy replenishment. But the food didn't just nourish them, it brought them comfort and a sense of security. After facing danger and uncertainty in battle, the familiarity of a warm, nourishing meal served as a reminder of home, of community, and of survival. The communal nature of these meals helped reinforce the warriors' sense of belonging, while the hearty food helped calm the mind and relax the body. But it wasn't just the food that made these meals so powerful. It was the entire atmosphere surrounding the meal, the warmth of the longhouse, the camaraderie of fellow warriors, and the sounds of storytelling and laughter all contributed to the warriors' recovery. This environment, built around the fire, was where the warrior could let down their guard, share their experiences, and reconnect with their brothers in arms. It wasn't just about the nutrients they consumed. It was about the emotional and psychological nourishment that came from being with others who shared the same trials and triumphs. In addition to food, the Vikings' practice of mead played a vital role in the post-battle recovery. Mead, which was often consumed during feasts and after a battle, wasn't just a drink, it was part of a ceremonial ritual. Drinking mead together helped the warriors bond, celebrate, and relax. The alcohol in the mead acted as a mild sedative, helping the warriors unwind after the mental and physical strain of combat. It's important to note that mead wasn't just consumed for pleasure, it was deeply woven into Viking culture and tradition. Mead was a social tool, facilitating conversation, laughter, and the reaffirmation of brotherhood. The Vikings understood that, after a battle, their warriors needed not just physical recovery, but also emotional and psychological healing. Sharing mead in the company of comrades after a battle helped the warriors process what had happened, reflect on their experiences, and prepare themselves to move forward. It's easy to overlook the power of social rituals like this, but for the Vikings, they were essential to the healing process. The sense of camaraderie and shared experience provided mental support that was just as necessary for recovery as the food and drink itself. Moreover, after a battle, the act of sharing stories and songs was another vital part of the recovery process. The Vikings had a rich tradition of oral storytelling, and it was during post-battle feasts that the warriors would recount their experiences, celebrate their victories, and mourn their losses. Storytelling served as both a therapeutic release and a cultural ritual. By narrating their experiences, the warriors allowed themselves to process the emotional and psychological weight of the battle. It was through these stories that the warrior could come to terms with the day's events, whether it was a triumphant victory or a devastating loss. Sharing the story with fellow warriors who had experienced the same challenges provided a sense of solidarity and support. This act of verbalizing their experiences helped the warriors make sense of what had happened, release pent-up emotions, and bond with their comrades. Songs, too, played a significant role in this process. Many Viking songs were about battles, victories, and heroes, and singing these songs helped the warriors reinforce their identity as part of a proud warrior culture. Music, like food and mead, had a deeply therapeutic quality, and it helped the warriors heal emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. While the mental and emotional aspects of recovery were crucial, the physical recovery of the Viking warrior was just as important. After a battle, the warrior's body needed to heal from the physical toll of combat. The food they ate, such as protein-rich meats, fish, and hearty grains, played a direct role in the repair and restoration of muscles and tissues. The Vikings understood that recovery wasn't just about resting. It was about actively providing the body with the nutrients it needed to repair itself. The physical activities that took place in the days following the battle, such as walking, light labor, and maintaining weapons, also played an important role in maintaining mobility and strength. For the Vikings, the process of recovery wasn't passive, was an active one, and every aspect of their lifestyle supported this process. The Vikings also had a deep connection with nature, which further aided in their recovery. The natural environment played a role in the physical, mental, and emotional healing of the warrior. The cool air of the northern regions, the peace of the forests, and the tranquility of the rivers helped calm the mind and reduce physical inflammation. The connection to nature also gave the Vikings a sense of perspective. In a world that was often unpredictable and violent, nature provided a constant something that was stable and enduring. Whether it was the quiet beauty of a forest or the vastness of the sky, nature allowed the Viking warriors to reconnect with something greater than themselves. This connection to the natural world provided solace and perspective after a battle, helping the warriors recharge both physically and emotionally. All these aspects, the food, mead, social bonding, rituals, physical activity, and connection to nature, worked together in harmony to ensure that the Viking warriors could recover fully after a battle. Their post-battle recovery routine wasn't just about surviving, it was about thriving. It was about coming together as a community, restoring balance to both the body and the mind, and preparing for whatever came next. The Vikings understood that recovery wasn't just a momentary pause, it was a critical part of their strength, resilience, and ability to keep moving forward. They knew that to face another challenge, they had to restore themselves, both physically and mentally, and they created a system that allowed them to do just that. Through their food, their rituals, their connection to one another and to nature, the Vikings ensured they were always ready to rise again, stronger than before. As we wrap up our exploration of the Viking warriors' post-battle recovery, it's important to reflect on how these practices not only aided their immediate restoration, but also contributed to the long-term resilience that was a hallmark of Viking culture. The recovery process wasn't just a brief respite. It was a way of life ingrained in the very fabric of Viking society. From the food they consumed to the social bonds they fostered, every element of their recovery routine was aimed at reinforcing the physical, emotional, and mental fortitude needed to survive in a brutal world. What's fascinating is that the Vikings approached recovery as a multifaceted process, understanding that it wasn't enough to simply replenish the body's energy after a fight. They recognized the need to recover their minds, their emotions, and their spirits as well. This holistic view of recovery is something that is still relevant today, as modern cultures increasingly recognize the importance of mental and emotional health in the context of physical recovery. Let's consider the role of community and camaraderie. In Viking recovery, the communal aspect of their meals and rituals was not just a cultural tradition. It was a vital component of the warrior's ability to heal. After a battle, when the intensity of combat had taken its toll on both the body and the psyche, the warrior needed to reconnect with their comrades. The act of sitting down to a meal, sharing stories, and raising a cup of mead together allowed the warriors to process their experiences. It was during these moments that they could reflect on the battle, mourn their losses, and celebrate their victories. This shared bonding helped to ease the emotional burden of battle, fostering a sense of unity and belonging. It also helped the warriors reframe the experience of battle not as an isolated event, but as part of a larger story that they were all a part of. These communal rituals allowed the Vikings to share their burdens and joys, reinforcing the idea that they were stronger together. Beyond the emotional support that came from sharing meals and stories, the physical support that came from the warrior community was just as important. The Vikings relied on each other not only for survival in battle, but also for their recovery afterward. This was not just a group of individuals who happened to fight together. It was a true brotherhood. The interconnectedness of their lives meant that when one warrior was down, the others would help lift them up. After a battle, warriors who were more physically intact would help their wounded comrades, whether by providing them with food or tending to their injuries. This communal care extended beyond physical injuries to the emotional scars left by battle. Even those who weren't directly involved in the conflict would provide support by offering words of encouragement or assistance in any way they could. In Viking society, the success of the group depended on the well-being of each individual, and this was particularly evident after a battle. While the social environment played a huge role in recovery, the Vikings also understood the power of solitude in the healing process. After the initial group meal and the emotional catharsis that came with sharing stories and drinking mead, many warriors would retreat into solitude to process their thoughts. The peaceful solitude of the natural world allowed them to reflect deeply on the battle, their losses, and their place in the world. Whether they wandered through the forest, sat by the shore, or found a quiet spot to be alone, these moments of reflection were essential for regaining a sense of clarity. The Vikings recognized that mental and emotional healing often required solitude, a chance to quiet the mind and regain inner peace before re-engaging with the world. Nature, with its stillness and beauty, played a huge role in providing this space for contemplation. For the Vikings, nature was not just a backdrop to their daily lives. It was a source of strength, healing, and perspective. The physical recovery process was equally important, and we've seen that the Vikings' diet was carefully designed to support muscle repair, energy restoration, and overall health. But recovery wasn't just about what they ate. It was also about how they moved and how they used their bodies in the days following battle. After the immediate rest that followed a battle, the Vikings would engage in light physical activity, such as walking, training, or repairing their weapons and boats. This wasn't just about staying active for the sake of exercise. It was part of the Viking way of life. Physical labor, whether it was maintaining their homes, farming, or preparing for the next journey, kept the warriors physically strong and agile. These daily activities ensured that they remained in peak condition, physically capable of handling the demands of battle when the time came. The Vikings understood that staying strong wasn't just about recovery, it was about continual maintenance of their strength and readiness for what lay ahead. Even in the calm moments after a battle, the Vikings stayed active and engaged in physical labor to maintain their physical resilience. We also cannot overlook the role of rest and sleep in the Vikings' recovery. After a long day of combat, when the body had expended so much energy, sleep was essential for both physical and mental restoration. The Viking warriors didn't have the luxury of modern sleep aids or techniques, but they did have a natural rhythm and environment that supported their rest. The firm sleeping surfaces in the longhouse, combined with the warmth from the fire, created the perfect environment for deep, restorative sleep. Unlike modern times, where soft beds and comfort often disrupt our sleep, the Vikings understood that a firm surface, combined with warmth and a sense of safety, was ideal for muscle recovery. Their bodies accustomed to the rigors of battle, were better served by the simplicity of their sleeping arrangements. Sleep for the Vikings wasn't just about physical recovery, it was a chance for the body to reset, to heal from the damage inflicted during the day, and to prepare for the challenges that awaited them. Their sleep patterns may have been segmented, with periods of waking during the night, but this was also part of their strategy for recovery. They may have used these waking moments for quiet reflection or tending the fire, which helped create a deeper sense of relaxation. Ultimately, the Viking post-battle recovery routine was about more than just food and rest. It was about creating an environment that fostered the restoration of both body and mind. The warriors relied on each other for emotional support, bonded through shared rituals and communal meals. They understood the importance of reflection and solitude for mental clarity. They used their natural environment to restore their physical and mental health. Everything from the food they ate to the social interactions they engaged in worked together to prepare them for the next battle, ensuring that they could recover quickly and remain resilient. In the harsh, unforgiving world of the Vikings, where survival was a daily challenge, the ability to recover swiftly and fully was as crucial as the ability to fight. Their recovery rituals, centered around food, sleep, nature, and social connection, ensured that the Vikings were always ready to face whatever came next with renewed strength and determination.